Hi everybody, Al Bernstein here with another one of my video blogs, and in this one I'm going to talk about the fight I did this past weekend, Abner Mares against Anselmo Moreno. Of course, there's lots of other material here on the boxing channel about coverage of that match, but I thought I just would add some post-fight thoughts a day or so after the fight, after I've had a chance to revisit the broadcast and revisit thoughts about that fight, and also spin it forward a little bit. First, let me address the little mini dust-up that a few people seem to have had with me on Twitter. Let me say first and very emphatically, I think Abner Mares is a terrific fighter, a terrific young man, and I think he is probably a fighter now we have to put in the top 10 pound-for-pound list of the sport. So that's a given. People, I think, misinterpreted my distress with the officiating of his recent fights with somehow a criticism of Abner Mares. Here's the bottom line of all this. Abner has a unique style now. He used to be a boxer-puncher. Now he's not a boxer-puncher. He's a brawler. He's very effective at it. He comes in, oftentimes the way he comes in, it's not with the intent to butt, but his head will precede his body. Fighters naturally kind of, when they see that coming, their defense mechanisms to put their hand on his head. When he does that, he keeps punching because Abner Mares' viewpoint is, I'm going to keep punching, and he sprays those punches. Sometimes they go low. They go all over the place. But his theory is, I've got to keep punching because I've now adopted this aggressive style. My issue is not even with his style necessarily. It's that officials have not figured out how to deal with it. Part of the problem is that in the first fight that he had with Joseph Agbeko, when he threw a lot of low punches, and their reasoning for it was that Agbeko was pushing his head down, and when he was down there, he'd throw punches, and they ended up being low. Now, to some degree, that may have been true, but it was difficult to use that as an excuse for all the low blows. The problem is that then officials since that point have now adopted the idea that when Abner Mares comes in, people are breaking the rules by pulling his head down. Well, in a sense they are, but it's because of him coming in with his head. So here's the deal. To really figure out how to officiate this, in my opinion, they need to take a laissez-faire attitude, which is do nothing. If there's a blatant low blow by Mares, you need to caution him on it because he's going to keep punching. But if it's just him coming in with his head and the guy puts his hand on his head, or if Mares' low blows there are a few of them, or they're not meaningful, then you have to let them fight. You've got to let them fight. What you have to do is show restraint if you're a referee in a Mares fight. But the referees, to be perfectly blunt, seem to have it in their mind that this is about people pushing on Abner Mares' head. That's an inappropriate viewpoint in my mind because this has been happening for 3 or 4 fights. Well, every fighter doesn't decide they're going to foul by pushing Abner Mares' head down. It is a cause and effect kind of a thing. So my difficulty with how Abner Mares' fights get officiated in no way, shape, or form is a criticism necessarily of Abner Mares. When he's told that he has to keep his punches up, or he's warned, or points deducted, guess what? He does it. His idea is, I'm going to attack and I'm going to punch. And because of the way he attacks, he's not trying to throw low blows. I don't think he's a dirty fighter. He's not trying to butt the fighter he's coming in at. His head precedes him, and then he keeps punching even when he's off balance and if his hands and his body is too low. So I think Abner Mares is a terrific body puncher. I think he's a great fighter. And I just think that they need to figure out ways to officiate his fight. So I wanted to clarify that because some people, for whatever reason, seem to think I have this issue with Abner Mares. Not at all. I admire what he's done in the sport. He was a young man who had a very difficult upbringing, was able to pull himself up and had to go to Mexico to avoid the gang activity in the Hawaiian Gardens area, in the LA area. Went to Mexico on his own for 3 years to work with the Mexican amateur boxing program. His parents really sent him there to try and save him. He had a brother who unfortunately had to go to prison, did not escape all of that. Now, thank goodness, he's out. Abner Mares became a man when he was in Mexico fighting for the Mexican team, came back, and he has turned himself into not only a great fighter, but somebody who I think you're happy to call champion because he comports himself in such a good way. So all that having been said, for those folks that think somehow I have a thing about Abner Mares that's negative, I don't. And let me further add one other thing. This may sound defensive, but even if I did, even if I had a problem with Abner Mares, which I certainly don't, or any fighter, it's my job to not let that influence what I do on a broadcast. And I believe that for the most part, in fact, maybe for the whole part, my track record over 30 years is that no one would ever know whether there's any fighter who is less pleasant to me than another fighter. And let's face it, in 30 years, you're going to have some boxers that they're just more pleasant to deal with than others. It's my job for you to never know whether any of that happened, because guess what? That has no bearing on whether they get a fair shake when they're on a fight and I'm announcing them. Any boxer that steps in the ring has earned that right to be announced fairly. So not only don't I have an axe to grind against Abner, but even if I did, it shouldn't affect how I do the fight. As I said on Twitter, I certainly make mistakes, and I've made a number of them over the last 30 years, but none of them have to do with any bias or specific axe to grind. Abner Mares won very decisively the fight he fought against Anselmo Moreno. He imposed his will on him, used a terrific body attack, tremendous overhand right, and as I said in the broadcast, a diversified attack to beat Anselmo Moreno. I thought the 120 to 106 score by Dr. James Jenkin, who's, by the way, is normally a very good official, I thought that was way out of line. And I thought Raul Caiz Jr. did the wrong thing in taking a point away in the 11th round from Anselmo Moreno. But that aside, Mares fought a terrific fight, deserved the victory he got. So I hope I've set the record straight on this one, and that's my final statement.